From the first day of its existence, Israel has faced the problem of proving the right of its existence to almost the entire Arab world, and as a rule, it was necessary to prove this right mainly by force of arms. There are still a number of countries that do not recognize Israel as a country. In addition, there are territorial disputes with several neighboring states. All this, as well as the almost non-stop being in a state of war, makes it necessary for Israel to maintain a strong army on all sides. A special feature is also the developed and practically independent military industry, which allows the production of military equipment for any purpose. The Israel Defense Forces today is one of the most combat-ready armies in the world and perhaps the most combat-ready in the Middle East. Despite the relatively small number of personnel on active duty, only about 200,000 people. The structure of the Israeli army includes ground forces, air force and naval forces. In addition, although Israel does not advertise this, it is assumed that there are land-based, sea-based, and air-based nuclear weapons, according to some sources, about 100 nuclear charges. Israel's military budget is about $20 billion. The Israeli ground forces consist of motorized infantry, armored troops, artillery, special purpose troops, light infantry, border guards and support troops. The armament of the ground forces consists mainly of samples, its own production, and has about 4,000 Merkava tanks of modifications 2, 3 and 4, about 8,000 infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers, about 2,000 pieces of artillery, including self-propelled artillery guns, MLRS and mortars. In addition, Israel is armed with Jericho-type missile systems for operational and tactical purposes, but their number is not reported. The ground forces have sufficiently developed special forces units designed to conduct reconnaissance, perform sabotage actions in the enemy's rear, as well as conduct information operations. Their number and structure are not reported. The total number of land troops on active service is about 150,000 people. The Israeli Air Force generally includes fighter, strike, army and auxiliary aircraft, as well as air defense forces. The Air Force has about 380 modern American combat aircraft of the type F-16, F-15 of various modifications, including modified ones with the participation of the Israeli military industry, and about 20 new F-35. There are also about 100 obsolete F-3 and Kfir in storage. About 80 American-made Boeing 707 and C-130 transport aircraft. The Army aviation is represented by American Apache and Cobra helicopters of about 140 units, as well as transport and multifunctional helicopters manufactured by the USA of various types. Also in service with the Air Force are reconnaissance and reconnaissance strike drones such as Heron, Hermes and others. The exact amount is not reported. The Air Defense Forces have about 500 SAM launchers, including long, medium and short-range American anti-missile systems such as Patriot and of their own production, such as the Iron Dome. In addition, the Air Force includes special purpose units whose main tasks are reconnaissance and targeting of strike aircraft at enemy targets. The total number of the Air Force, not counting reservists, is about 36,000 people. Israel has a small naval force, which includes up to 100 vessels for various purposes, including 5 submarines, 3 corvettes, 10 missile and for patrol boats, as well as auxiliary ships. The Navy also has special forces with reconnaissance and mine sabotage tasks. The total number of the Israeli Navy does not exceed 10,000 people. Israel has much combat experience, so since 1948 to this time, Israel has taken part in about 15 military conflicts of varying intensity. In a series of Arab-Israeli wars of the last century, Israel repeatedly had to deal with a numerically superior enemy more than twice, and at the same time emerged victorious. In the 21st century, Israel's successes in the wars with Lebanon were not always unambiguous. Nowadays, Israel almost constantly uses aircraft, missiles and artillery to strike targets of Syrian and Iranian troops. Turkey does not abandon its desire to restore the Ottoman Empire, and establish a dominant position in the Middle East. An aggressive policy towards neighboring states, with an eye to becoming the center of a new world order, determines the development of the armed forces. Turkey's army is the second largest in NATO after the United States and one of the most powerful in the Middle East. Turkey's defense budget is about $20 billion, and the number of active duty armed forces is up to 500,000 people. It should be noted that Turkey has recently developed its own technologically advanced military industry, which makes it possible to create most types of necessary weapons and equipment, but so far most of the weapons and military equipment of the Turkish army are imported from American and European production. The Turkish army consists of ground forces, air force, and naval forces. The ground forces are the backbone of the Turkish armed forces and include motorized infantry, armored troops, rocket troops, and artillery. Military air defense, airborne troops, military intelligence, and special operations forces, as well as support troops. The ground forces are armed with more than 3,500 tanks, mainly American M60 of various modifications and German Leopard 1 and 2, the creation of its own Altai tank, about 5,000 infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers, 6,000 artillery pieces, multiple rocket launchers and mortars, about 30 operational and tactical missile systems, more than 400 launchers of medium and short-range anti-aircraft missile systems of European, American production, Russian-made long-range air defense systems, as well as about 1,000 American Stinger manpads. The Special Operations Forces of the Turkish Ground Forces are represented by 2 brigades and several special purpose units, with the tasks of reconnaissance, conducting special operations, destroying strategically important objects in the enemy's rear, and physically eliminating the personnel of the enemy. The Special Operations Forces training program is similar to the commando training courses in the United States and corresponds to the plans of the NATO command. The number of Special Operations Forces is about 6,000 people. In total, the number of land forces in active service is approximately 390,000 people. The Turkish Air Force is divided into fighter bomber, reconnaissance, transport, and auxiliary aircraft. The Air Force has about 400 combat aircraft in service, 200 of which are American F-16s. The other 200 are obsolete American F-4 and F-5. They are planned to be replaced by F-35 fighters in the future, as well as about 400 auxiliary aircraft. Turkey also has 4 new European E-70 long-range radar detection and control aircraft in service. The basis of transport aviation is the American 130. There is also a European heavy transport aircraft A4OM. Training aviation is represented by a wide range of Canadian and European-made aircraft. Helicopters of the Army Aviation are represented by combat models of joint production with Italy of the T-129 attack, American and European production of the UH-1H, Chinook, Black Hawk, Eurocopter and others in the amount of about 500 units. The Turkish Air Force has about 200 reconnaissance and strike command aerial vehicles with its own production, such as Anka and Bayraktar. These devices have shown quite high efficiency in conducting military operations in Syria and Libya. The number of the Air Force is approximately 60,000 people on active duty. The Turkish Navy consists of 4 flotillas and 2 operational groups, which include about 149 warships, boats and vessels of various classes, including 13 submarines, 16 frigates, 10 corvettes, 38 landing ships, 27 missile boats, about 33 patrol boats, as well as auxiliary vessels. The Navy has Marines and coastal troops. The armament of the Marine Corps consists of armored combat vehicles, small arms, anti-tank missile systems, anti-aircraft weapons, various light delivery vehicles. The Turkish Navy has approximately 50,000 active duty personnel. The combat experience of the Turkish army in the 20th century after World War II is noted during the invasion of Cyprus by the Turkish army. In this short-term local conflict, Turkish troops won a decisive victory over the Greek army. Airborne troops, Navy and aviation were actively used. As a result, a large territory of Cyprus came under the control of Turkey. In addition, Turkey conducted continuous counter-terrorist actions on its territory against the Kurds. In the 21st century, Turkish troops have repeatedly invaded the territories of neighboring states of Iraq, Syria under the pretext of fighting against Kurdish armed groups, as well as Libya. A distinctive feature was the massive use of long-range artillery and reconnaissance and strike drones. There is experience of combat operations in urban conditions. Thus, with a comparable military budget, the Turkish armed forces outnumber the Israel Defense Forces by more than 2 times. At the same time, both countries spend most of the military budget on the development of new types of weapons and equipment. The number of Turkish ground forces is also twice as large. However, the armored armament of the Turkish army is inferior to the Israeli one both in quantity and quality. At the same time, Turkey has a significantly larger number of artillery pieces of various classes than Israel. Turkey's Special Operations Forces are also outnumbered by Israeli Special Forces. The Israeli and Turkish Air Forces have parity in the number of combat aircraft. However, the quality of the Israeli Air Force combat aircraft surpasses the Turkish ones. The attack helicopters of the Israeli Air Force are also better in combat capabilities, and the Army aviation is inferior to the Turkish one in terms of quantitative composition. The Turkish and Israeli Air Forces are armed with unmanned aerial vehicles for various purposes, including reconnaissance and strike. Turkey is inferior to Israel in terms of the quality of anti-aircraft missile and anti-missile systems, but the number of SAMs in the armies of both countries is comparable. The total number of personnel of the Turkish Air Force is significantly larger than the Israeli ones. In terms of the number of personnel of the Israeli Navy is significantly inferior to the Turkish. In terms of the number of warships, Israel is also inferior to Turkey, while the qualitative indicator of the Israeli and Turkish navies is about the same. The peculiarity of the Israeli army is its vast combat experience, almost continuously fighting with neighboring states with varying degrees of intensity, including with a superior enemy. The Turkish army occasionally takes part in armed conflicts, mainly of low intensity, using the armed forces for the most part remotely and making extensive use of foreign mercenaries. Another feature of the Israeli army is, although it is not advertised, the presence of nuclear weapons, which is a significant advantage over non-nuclear armed forces. In general, both armies are a serious force in the region, and the unambiguous superiority of one over the other can only be determined by a war, which hopefully will never happen. Subscribe to the channel, write comments. See you soon.